A lot of NPCs in the Elder Scrolls games are pretty dumb, but in this video I want to celebrate the smartest people in the Elder Scrolls universe. So who is the smartest person in the Elder Scrolls? Kalsi Moe is a High Elven mage and scholar encounterable in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, specifically in the city of Markarth. Kalsi Moe is a minor celebrity among the scholarly community due to his pioneering investigation into the Dwemer. He's written no less than 3 books analysing this lost civilization, but most impressive of all, he managed to translate the Falmer language. This is an incredibly impressive feat. The Falmer are hostile, alien-like creatures that most travellers simply want to kill on first sight. Plus, they're blind, so their written language must be some sort of braille or something. But to be fair, it's not as if Kalsi Moe managed to decipher this language from the Falmer themselves. The Falmer's progenitors, the Snow Elves, created the language that the Falmer themselves use, and it is using the leftovers of the Snow Elves literature that Kalsi Moe was able to decipher what is now the language of the Falmer. Nonetheless, the 200-year-old Kalsi Moe is undeniably an intelligent individual. His research paves the way for future explorers to potentially converse with a blind and troglodytic Falmer. Devar Fear is possibly the oldest living mortal by the time of Skyrim. He can be encountered in Morrowind, and his feats of magic are legendary. Not only was Devar Fear, the Telvanni wizard, able to clone himself several times to create a family, he also managed to discover a cure to the extremely deadly Corpus disease. The Corpus disease was an infection concocted by the malevolent Dagoth who used it as a means to infect and weaken the populace of Morrowind, ready for his invasion. However, when the Nerevarine was infected with this blight, Devar Fear managed to save their life, not by curing him of the disease per se, but by removing all the negative symptoms of the disease from the Nerevarine body. This means that the one positive effect, immortality, remained, leaving the Nerevarine unable to die by natural causes. Although Devar's research into Corpus might seem extremely specialised, his knowledge changed the course of history in the Elder Scrolls universe. He saved the life of the Nerevarine and undid the work of the demigod Dagoth. That's not even taking into account the fact he's a master wizard, comparable to the likes of Vivek, Sothasil and Ormalexia, before they used the Heart of Lorcan to become gods. Sibyl Stentor might come as a surprise because she's not an especially powerful mage. However, this Breton vampire is extremely skilled when it comes to political manoeuvring. Not only has she managed to stay in her position of court mage for 2 decades, despite being a bloodsucker, she's exercised her position to remarkable effect. As the advisor to 2 high kings and 1 jarl, Istelod, Toreg and Elisif respectively, she's helped to shape how Skyrim has been run. You only have to see her giving advice to Elisif in Skyrim to see that that's probably a good thing. She uses her wisdom to counter some of Elisif's worst decisions, such as when Elisif suggested that an entire legion be sent to scout out a cave a farmer heard disturbing noises in. Fair enough, a bunch of necromancers were actually trying to summon the Wolf Queen in there, but still, Elisif didn't know that at the time, and it would have been a waste of resources during a war. I don't know how old Sibyl Stentor is. She might be a young vampire, or she could be hundreds of years old, but surviving as a vampire in normal society is incredibly hard. Most vampires live in dank caves or secluded castles, such as Castle Volkerhair. For Sibyl to have survived in a busy court at the heart of Skyrim for 20 years is testimony to her intelligence. She might not be as magically capable as Divath, or even Kalsi Moe, but Sibyl is undeniably smart when it comes to politics and surviving in a hostile environment. Venus Galerion is a famous figure, even among famous figures in the Elder Scrolls. This Ultima mage founded the Mages Guild, an institution that lasted from the Second Era to the Oblivion Crisis. This high elf, who trained with the Sigic monks who were widely considered to be the best magical practitioners on the continent, had the foresight and intelligence to see that a continent-wide scholarly order open to the public would be a good idea. Born from her humble background, Valas was disgusted at how the political elite were the only ones allowed to learn magic in Tamriel. Due to his actions, magic has helped to improve the lives of many, from simple healing spells to spells that get rid of harmful gases in mines. It's safe to say that Valas is smart, chiefly for his creation of a guild that disseminates magical knowledge among the masses. However, his prowess with magic also speaks volumes of his intelligence. He managed to defeat, but not kill, the most powerful lich to have ever walked the earth, Manamark. But the fact that Manamark survived whilst Valas died at the scene of their confrontation says for itself that Manamark was more powerful than Valas. You might argue that Manamark isn't smarter than Valas, merely more twisted, because at the end of the day, it was his dabbling in necromancy and the dark arts that allowed him to survive and become so powerful. Nonetheless, Manamark is undeniably highly intelligent. He was the first ever lich, a lich being a undead being a mortal turns themselves into to become immortal, and Manamark also became a god. During the Warp in the West, a highly confusing period of history where reality was fractured and remade, Manamark managed to transform himself into a planet called the Necromancer Moon that rendered him a god. Now, it doesn't seem as if this happened in the timeline we experience in the Elder Scrolls games, but he did definitely become a god in an alternate timeline. So the Manamark we see in Oblivion is this timeline's version of that elf, and thus a much weaker version, although some have suggested that actually the Manamark in Oblivion is merely an imposter. Anyway, Manamark is clearly a highly intelligent elf, no matter what timeline he's in, because not many, bar Tiber Septim, have managed to render themselves a god, and not many are intelligent enough to pioneer magical practices, such as becoming a lich. Mancow Cameron, however, I think is smarter still than Manamark. Both Manamark and Mancow Cameron allied with Daedric princes to advance their own power, and both of them obviously failed. However, I consider Mancow Cameron more intelligent than Manamark for a few reasons. Firstly, Mancow Cameron was able to bring the Empire to its knees. He created an organisation, the Mythic Dawn, that managed to infiltrate the Empire to its core, enabling them to assassinate the Emperor and most of his sons. But more than that, Mancow Cameron was able to create his own pocket of oblivion, which he called Gaia Alata. I know Manamark became a god, but so did Mancow Cameron in a way. Mancow Cameron effectively became a miniature Daedric prince in his realm of oblivion. But all that aside, even in a conventional sense, Mancow Cameron is clearly intelligent because he was able to create an almost impenetrable secret cult based on his translations of Mehrunes Dagon's Mysterium Xerxes, a thick, complex tome which only the most astute Daedric scholars can decipher. Plus, although a lot of Cameron's writings are skewed and distorted, his thoughts in his commentaries on Mysterium Xerxes are profound. Not only does he seem to realise that the Elder Scrolls universe is a dream, but he expounds the view that the Aedra are not what they seem. In this regard, he's probably right. The gods aren't the benevolent beings they portray themselves as. Originally, they wanted to stop the project to create Nirn when they found out it would permanently drain them of their powers. In other words, the Aedra didn't willingly sacrifice themselves to create Nirn, despite what they might like mortals to think. But above every other individual in terms of intelligence is Tiber Septim. Tiber Septim remains the only individual in the history of the Elder Scrolls to unite the continent in a single political entity in order to bring long-lasting peace and prosperity. That achievement itself speaks volumes about the man's intelligence. It's true to say that he got a lot of help from advisors such as Zurin Arctus, but nonetheless, Tiber Septim was the individual who had the initiative and the drive to unite Tamriel in one state. Some of his best manoeuvring includes when he offered Morrowind increased autonomy in return for the Numidium, the device which he consequently used to conquer the Somerset Isles. But the most impressive thing about Tiber Septim, and this is a highly contentious issue, is that he mantled Lorcan and became a divine called Talos. But unlike Manamark, who became a god in an alternate timeline, and Mancow Cameron, who was killed by the hero of Kvatch, Tiber Septim successfully became a god. Despite the Thalmor's best efforts, he still lives by the time of the 5th Elder Scrolls game, as a deity worshipped by many humans across Tamriel. But to be able to mantle a god creates incredible intelligence, as I'm sure you can appreciate. We don't know exactly how he managed to do it, if he managed to do it at all, but some suggest that he used Kim, which is where you convince yourself that you are, for instance, Lorcan, in order to become him. Lorcan, for those of you who don't know, was the powerful primordial god who helped to create the Elder Scrolls universe, but he was later destroyed by the other Aedra. The main theory regarding Talos holds that Tiber Septim managed to superimpose himself on the gap that Lorcan left, enabling him to become the god Talos. It's primarily because of his apotheosis that I think Tiber Septim is the most intelligent person in the Elder Scrolls. Let me know which individual you think is the most intelligent in the Elder Scrolls universe. Anyway, thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.